Hello there, and welcome to the Sleepless Scientist, a quiet place in the cosmos where your thoughts can unwind and knowledge becomes a soft lullaby for the night. Tonight's journey will take us into one of the most beautiful and bewildering frontiers of the mind, dreams, and the question of whether they might be more than imagination. Could they be gentle crossings into parallel worlds, little windows to other versions of reality that feel real, familiar, and yet fade like mist the moment we wake? But before you settle in and get cozy, I'd love if you could take a moment to like this video and subscribe, only if you truly find these quiet explorations enjoyable. And when you're ready, leave a comment to let me know where in the world you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. It's always such a joy to see all the places we gather from, each in our own little slice of time. Now, feel free to dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for a soft background hum, and let's gently begin our journey together. And if your mind begins to wander, that's perfectly fine. Let it drift. We'll still be here, quietly unfolding the story, one breath, one thought, one dream at a time. Dreams are among the few experiences that every human shares. From the first hunter sleeping beside a fire, to the child waking up from a night of impossible adventure, we all spend hours each night travelling somewhere that no map can find. Ancient cultures thought of dreams as messages. The Sumerians believed God stepped through them to whisper advice or warnings. The Egyptians treated them as paths of prophecy. In Greece, the philosopher Aristotle suggested they were inner reflections, images shaped by the body's sensations rather than divine visitors. Still, even he could not quite explain why they felt so vividly real, as though another life unfolded behind our closed eyes. Centuries later, when science began to peek into the sleeping brain, it tried to replace myth with measurement. Electrodes traced the flickering rhythms of neurons, those tiny sparks of thought. Waves of activity rose and fell like tides, slow and heavy in deep sleep, quick and shimmering during moments of vivid dreaming. Scientists called this stage REM sleep, short for rapid eye movement, because the eyes dart beneath the lids as though following something unseen. In that state, the brain is almost as active as when awake, yet the body lies still, safely disconnected, held by a quiet paralysis so we do not act out what we see. It is here that the curtain between worlds seems to thin. In REM sleep, the brain's visual centres glow as if lit from within. The limbic system, where emotion lives, stirs with colour and feeling. The rational part of the mind, the one that checks logic and orders coffee, grows quiet. The result is a landscape woven from memories, desires, and possibilities, freed from the weight of gravity and reason. To the scientist, this is a pattern of signals. To the dreamer, it's another world. Consider what happens each night when you drift off. Your awareness, that small flame of attention, slowly dims. Thoughts begin to lose their edges, shapes melt, sounds stretch, and you slide into a sea of imagery. In those first few minutes, your brain is still listening to the outside world, the hum of the fan, the rhythm of your breath, but it also begins to generate its own world. Like a painter dipping brush into water, it blends real and imagined until they are impossible to tell apart. This in-between state has a name: hypnagogia. The ancients thought of it as a threshold, and perhaps they were right. Many artists and inventors lingered there deliberately. Thomas Edison, Salvador Dali, even Einstein, letting their minds dangle between waking and sleep to catch ideas from that drifting current. It is a curious thought that the mind, when freed from its usual senses, continues to build reality from the inside out. In waking life, our brains use incoming light, sound, touch, and smell to predict what's happening around us. At night, with those inputs turned down, the same predictive machinery keeps running, only now it must invent what it cannot receive. It fills the silence with stories, the darkness with light. Neuroscientists call this predictive processing. But we might think of it more simply. Your mind is a storyteller that refuses to stop when the world goes quiet. And perhaps this is where the question begins to blur. If waking life is itself a controlled dream, a projection of the brain's best guesses, then what we call dreams might just be the same process unchained. The philosopher and cognitive scientist Neil Seth once said, "We're all hallucinating all the time. It's just that when we agree on our hallucinations, we call it reality." It's a comforting, if slightly dizzying idea that the difference between the real and the imagined is not a wall, but a spectrum, one that gently shifts every night as consciousness steps across. Imagine, for a moment, that consciousness is like a radio signal. Your brain is the receiver, tuned to the frequency of waking life during the day. But when you sleep, that tuning dial begins to slip. The static changes. Another channel fades in, one where the rules differ, where gravity bends, where time unspools. Most nights you forget what you've heard when you tune back in the morning. But sometimes, for reasons no one fully understands, a fragment stays. A feeling, a face, a place that feels so real you can almost smell the air. Whether these dreamscapes arise from the brain's private theatre or from something vaster, they remind us of one quiet truth. Reality itself is woven from perception. What we call real may only be the layer we've grown used to, while others ripple just beyond the edge of thought. Tonight, we will wander gently between those ripples, through the science of sleep, the stories of dreamers, and the theories that suggest our minds may already be touching other worlds every night. So if you're comfortable, let the weight of the day sink away. Feel the pillow beneath you, the soft gravity holding you in place. We're not in a hurry. The world can wait. As your thoughts begin to slow, imagine a thin veil before you, a curtain of silver mist, quiet and shimmering. On one side, the steady rhythm of waking life. On the other, the infinite expanse of possibility. You've crossed it countless times without noticing. Tonight, we'll pause right at that threshold and listen to what it might be whispering. Close your eyes for a moment and picture the human brain not as a grey tangle of cells, but as an orchestra, millions of instruments playing together in a silent concert. Each neuron hums with its own rhythm, sending tiny electrical pulses that move like notes through invisible air. During the day, this orchestra performs a busy, complex piece. Attention, movement, language, all the sharp melodies of waking life. But at night, when consciousness drifts toward rest, the music changes. It slows, it deepens. New harmonies appear, strange, beautiful, and soft. That is the beginning of sleep's great symphony. For all our technology, we still do not fully understand what sleep truly is. It seems so simple. Close your eyes, rest, wake renewed. Yet under that calm surface, the brain is performing one of the most sophisticated ballets in nature. It moves through distinct stages, each with its own tempo, as if a conductor were guiding the body through movements of a grand nocturne. Scientists give these stages rather plain names: N1, N2, N3, and RM. But those are just labels. What they describe is an elegant choreography between body, mind, and time itself. The first stage, N1, is the prelude, the moment you drift, that delicious edge between wakefulness and sleep. Your muscles relax, but a thread of awareness remains. You might feel a sudden jolt, a falling sensation that startles you awake. That's your nervous system adjusting, a final spark of wakeful vigilance flickering out. The second stage, NE2, is where the rhythm steadies. The heart slows, breathing deepens. Your brain starts sending quick bursts of electrical patterns, tiny crackles scientists call spindles. But you don't have to remember the term. Think of them as soft drum beats marking the body's descent into deeper rest. Then comes N3, the slow wave sleep, the dark ocean of the night. Here the brain produces long, gentle pulses of activity, vast rolling waves that sweep across its surface. If you could listen, they would sound less like music and more like a tide. During this phase, your body repairs itself. Muscles rebuild, the immune system strengthens. It is a time for healing, growth and renewal. For a child, this stage is where growth, hormones flow most freely. For adults, it is a quiet workshop where the machinery of life performs maintenance, unseen. And finally, there is REM, rapid eye movement sleep, the strange, luminous coda where the dream world begins to bloom. In REM, the orchestra suddenly awakens again, but with different instruments. The visual areas of the brain light up as though seeing, even though your eyes are closed. The emotional centers glow like embers. The rational, planning regions, the ones that handle math appointments and grocery lists, stay hushed, allowing imagination to take the stage. It's as if the conductor whispered, "Now, let the violins wander wherever they wish." Your body, meanwhile, is carefully stilled. A protective mechanism switches off most muscle control so that your dream movements don't carry into the real world. It's a kind of gentle safety lock. You can run, swim, or fly in the dream, and yet you remain safe beneath your blanket, heart beating steadily, breath soft and shallow. The mind dances, the body listens. Every 90 minutes or so, this cycle repeats. Light sleep, deeper sleep, then REM, again and again, 4 to 6 times each night. The proportions change as the hours pass. Early in the night, deep sleep dominates, allowing physical repair. Closer to morning, REM takes over. That's why your most vivid, cinematic dreams often occur just before dawn, in the quiet hours when birds begin to stir and the world outside is still. Inside this nightly rhythm lies an entire universe of activity. Even when you appear still, billions of neurons are talking to one another, passing signals along microscopic bridges. They use chemicals, little messengers with names like serotonin and acetylcholine, that drift across tiny gaps to tell each other when to fire, when to rest. You don't need to memorize their names. You can think of them as colored threads in a tapestry, weaving patterns that shape thought and emotion. When the mix of these chemicals shifts, the quality of consciousness changes too, from alert to drowsy, from logic to reverie. Some researchers liken the sleeping brain to a computer running nightly maintenance, sorting, storing, and compressing memories. But a computer does its work in silence. The brain, by contrast, dreams. It turns this act of filing into something alive, emotional, and visual. The hippocampus, the brain's librarian, reviews the day's events, deciding what to keep. The amygdala adds colour, infusing each memory with feeling. The joy of laughter, the sharpness of fear, the warmth of love. Together they create what we later recall as the narratives of our dreams. Still, not everything fits neatly into the scientific frame. Some nights, our dreams replay fragments of real life, a conversation, a familiar street, a face we passed in the crowd. Other nights, they defy all logic. We meet people we've never known, visit worlds that couldn't exist, and feel emotions unconnected to any waking event. The brain, it seems, does not simply reprocess, it recomposes. It mixes memory with imagination the way a jazz musician reshapes a melody in the dark. You might wonder why this intricate symphony happens at all. Why does nature devote a third of our lives to this strange performance? Some scientists suggest dreams help us rehearse challenges, to practice survival in a safe rehearsal space. Others see them as the mind's way of clearing emotional clutter, resolving unfinished feelings through symbolic play. And perhaps both are true. The beauty of the theory lies not in choosing one explanation, but in recognizing that the brain may be doing many things at once, like an orchestra where every instrument plays its part, yet no single melody defines the song. If you pay attention, you can feel this rhythm even now. The soft hum behind your eyes, the pulse in your fingertips, the gentle slowing of breath. All of it is part of that same symphony. When you fall asleep tonight, remember that your mind isn't shutting down. It's tuning itself, adjusting the strings of thought and letting new harmonies rise. The theatre of dreams isn't chaos. It's a different kind of order, one written in the language of images and emotions rather than words. Somewhere deep within that quiet performance, consciousness listens to itself, perhaps wondering which version is real, the daytime song or the one played in secret after dark. And as you drift deeper into that awareness, it's comforting to know that this nightly concert has been performed since the dawn of our species, each heartbeat, each breath a note in the oldest lullaby of all. Imagine that every waking moment of your life is quietly being filmed, not by a camera, but by your own brain. Each sight, sound, smell, and feeling becomes part of a continuous movie that you experience from the inside. You never stop recording, and you never stop predicting what the next frame will be. This is how the mind makes sense of reality. It's not just watching the world, it's composing it second by second from within. During the day, your senses feed the projector with endless detail. Light bouncing off walls, voices drifting from another room, the temperature of air on your skin. But even as it takes in this information, your brain is already guessing what comes next. When someone speaks, you predict the next word. When you walk, you anticipate the floor beneath your foot. This process is so seamless that you never notice it. Scientists sometimes call it predictive perception, but it feels much simpler than that. It feels like being alive. At night, though, something remarkable happens. The projector keeps running, but the film reel changes. The external world goes dark. There are no new signals coming in through the eyes, the ears, or the skin. Deprived of its usual script, the mind begins to write its own. It spins, patterns from memory, emotion, and imagination. It doesn't stop projecting reality, it simply switches to a new channel. The result is what we call dreaming, the brain's attempt to keep making sense of existence even when the external world has gone silent. Think about what happens when you dream of running. Your brain activates the same motor regions that control real movement. The muscles are paralyzed for safety, but the inner command is genuine. The experience of motion, of effort, of heart pounding in your chest. All of it feels real because in a way it is. The brain doesn't distinguish much between an imagined act and a physical one. This is why a nightmare can make you wake in a sweat, your heart racing, your breath uneven. The mind projects a story and the body believes it. This is not a flaw. It's a testament to how deeply reality depends on perception. The mind's projector doesn't simply reflect the world, it generates it. During the day, that generation is anchored by sensory feedback. You reach for a cup, feel its weight, and the feedback confirms the story. At night, that anchor is released, and the imagination drifts freely, constructing entire landscapes that obey their own laws of physics and emotion. Now and then, this projector reveals how powerful it truly is. Consider the phenomenon of phantom sensations. When a person who has lost a limb still feels it as though it were there. The brain's map of the body remains active, projecting a reality that no longer physically exists. Or think about optical illusions, where two identical lines seem different lengths just because of the context around them. The senses provide the raw data, but it's the mind that decides what's true. Dreams are the same principle, turned inward. They are the most private illusions of all, yet they follow the same logic as waking life. That realization can be both comforting and unsettling. If both waking and dreaming are constructed experiences, perhaps the line between them is thinner than we imagine. Some philosophers have suggested that waking life might be a kind of collective dream, one we all share and agree upon through our senses. It's not to say that the table or the sky are imaginary, but that what we experience of them is a translation, a version of reality interpreted through the limited instruments of the human mind. You can imagine it as a great orchestra of frequencies playing all at once, and your consciousness is tuned to only one band of the spectrum. When you fall asleep, the dial drifts, and another melody begins. In this softer, quieter state, your brain begins to test possibilities. It merges memories in strange combinations, the face of a friend blended with a stranger, your childhood home floating in the sky, the hallway that leads nowhere and everywhere. These surreal transitions aren't random. They show how the brain experiments with meaning. The neural circuits responsible for attention and logic loosen their grip, allowing far-flung associations to meet. It's the same looseness that allows creativity to spark during the day, that sudden idea in the shower, that flash of intuition that seems to appear from nowhere. In a sense, the dreaming mind is the creative mind, unbound. Think of the brain like a painter who works in two styles. By day, it paints with careful realism, ensuring that everything fits the world's expectations. By night, it turns abstract, expressionist, painting feelings instead of facts. Both canvases come from the same hand. Both are real in their own way. The waking world teaches the dreamer what reality feels like, and the dream world teaches the waking mind that reality can bend. There is a beautiful symmetry in that exchange. When neuroscientists measure the brain during REM sleep, they find that the visual areas, the regions that process images, are as active as they are when our eyes are open. The difference is that the signals no longer come from the outside. They arise from within, like light glowing through stained glass instead of shining from a lamp. In this sense, dreams are self-generated light, the brain illuminating its own interior universe. The deeper you look, the more mysterious it becomes. Each neuron fires using tiny pulses of electricity and waves of charged particles, invisible to any naked eye. These are not mathematical symbols or formulas. Think of them as whispers, tiny flickers of light crossing microscopic bridges. When billions of them fire together, patterns emerge, patterns that somehow become the taste of memory, the colour of thought, the sound of a dream. And even though these signals are physical, the worlds they create have shape, emotion, even logic. How strange that sparks so small can hold entire cities of imagination. When you think about it, the boundary between physics and experience begins to blur. Every dream you've ever had, from the most terrifying to the most tender, has been sculpted from these same pulses. They are the alphabet of consciousness, a quiet code that turns electricity into story. So when you drift to sleep tonight and the movie projector of your mind hums to life again, remember, it's not merely replaying memories, it's composing new worlds, each as detailed and convincing as the one you wake to. Perhaps those worlds vanish when you open your eyes, or perhaps they keep unfolding somewhere, waiting for you to return. For now though, it's enough to know that your mind never truly sleeps. It simply changes theatres, from the bright one outside to the soft, infinite one within. And in that dimly lit cinema of the self, consciousness plays its quiet, eternal film, one frame at a time. There is a moment, a very delicate one, when you're no longer quite awake, but not yet asleep. The thoughts in your head begin to drift out of order. The room still exists around you though, softer now, as if made of mist. A hum that you hadn't noticed all day begins to swell, faintly musical. And then, perhaps for a few seconds, you see something that isn't really there. A face, a shape, a colour blooming and fading before you cross the threshold into sleep. That moment is called hypnagogia. The word sounds clinical, but what it describes is almost poetic. It is the twilight between consciousness and surrender, the doorway through which both dream and waking reality pass. In that short interval, the mind is like an old radio sliding between stations, catching fragments of several worlds at once. You might hear a voice that isn't real, or see a scene that flickers and disappears when you blink. Some people feel as if they're floating, others hear their name whispered in a room where no one speaks. These sensations are brief, but they carry the signature of both realms, the logic of waking life and the fluid imagination of dreams. Artists, scientists, and mystics have lingered here for centuries. Salvador Dali used to hold a spoon in his hand while sitting in a chair, hovering at the edge of sleep. When he finally nodded off, the spoon would fall and clang on the floor, waking him instantly. In that moment between dozing and waking, he claimed to glimpse images that became the foundation of his paintings. Clocks melting, landscapes bending, worlds folding into themselves. Thomas Edison did something similar, napping with steel balls in his palms. When they dropped, the noise would pull him back, and he'd write down whatever ideas had just flashed through his mind. Even Albert Einstein was said to use this method when struggling with complex thought experiments about time. What is it about this fragile moment that opens the floodgates of imagination? Neuroscience suggests that, as we drift into sleep, the brain's rational regions begin to relax their control. The part of the mind that judges, censors, or organizes thought gently steps aside, while sensory and emotional networks remain active. The result is a loosened state of awareness, still conscious enough to observe, yet free enough to combine memories and sensations in unusual ways. You might think of it as a rehearsal space for the dream to come. In these minutes, images often appear in bursts. Not full dreams, but snapshots. A face, a doorway, a shifting pattern of light. Some feel as though they've seen an entire story condensed into a heartbeat. These micro-dreams, as some researchers call them, are like single brush strokes from the larger painting that will soon emerge. To the waking observer, they may seem meaningless, but to the brain, they mark the beginning of the transformation, the conscious mind yielding to the deeper currents beneath. Yet there's another way to see it, a more mysterious one. If dreams are doorways into parallel versions of reality, then hypnagogia might be the moment when the latch begins to turn. The senses still, transmit information from the waking world, the faint glow of a lamp, the sound of your breathing, while the inner eye begins to open towards something else. Two realities overlap for an instant, like waves crossing in the same water. What you experience then is the shimmer of interference, fragments from both sides blending into something briefly luminous. For many, this state also comes with a feeling of presence, a shadow, a figure standing nearby, not menacing, but simply there. Ancient people often described such moments as encounters with spirits or guardians of the threshold. Modern science calls it a product of the brain's attempt to make sense of sensory disconnection. As muscle control fades and perception shifts, the mind creates the image of a watcher. But whichever explanation you prefer, the emotional truth remains the same. Something about that in-between feels alive. There are practical ways to explore this twilight safely. One is to rest while keeping a gentle awareness of your breath, allowing thoughts to wander without chasing them. When images or sounds begin to rise, notice them, but don't hold on. The moment you try to grasp them, they vanish. Hypnagogia, like a dream butterfly, lands only when you stay still. With practice, some people can extend this state for longer, a soft form of lucid dreaming that begins before sleep fully takes hold. It can become a wellspring of creativity, insight, or simply quiet wonder. The sensations can vary widely. Some feel a gentle vibration, as if the body were humming with unseen energy. Others hear snippets of music, often unlike anything they've ever known. These aren't hallucinations in the clinical sense. They're the brain's natural language translating the border crossing into symbols you can understand. The hum is your nervous system quieting. The light, the gradual shift in electrical patterns across your visual cortex. Yet describing it only in biological terms is like explaining a rainbow as refraction and water droplets. True, but incomplete. the experience itself remains larger, more mysterious. In spiritual traditions, this threshold has always held special meaning. In Tibetan dream yoga, practitioners train to remain aware through hypnagogia and into the dream itself, treating both as realms of consciousness to be explored, not escaped. In ancient Egypt, temples were built for incubation sleep, where dreamers would lie on sacred floors hoping for divine visions. Even today, some cultures speak of the veil, a boundary you cross each night that separates this world from others. Science describes brain waves. Mythology describes doors. Perhaps both are glimpses of the same hidden geometry, seen from different sides. There's a tender symmetry in the way hypnagogia mirrors its sibling on the other end of sleep, the hypnopompic state, that moment of returning. Both are doors, one closing, one opening. And just as you can drift into sleep accompanied by fragments of waking life, you can awaken carrying fragments of dreams. Sometimes they arrive as a mood that lingers all morning, a feeling you can't name but can't shake. Sometimes it's an image, a room you swear you visited, though it doesn't exist. These echoes are the footprints of the dreamer crossing back over the threshold. Perhaps this is what makes the human mind so extraordinary. Even in the simple act of falling asleep, it reveals its dual nature. One foot in the measurable world, one in the realm beyond measurement. Hypnagogia reminds us that consciousness is not an on-off switch. It's a gradient, a river that runs through many shades of awareness. And every night, as you drift at its edge, you touch something ancient, a state that our ancestors must have known, sitting by their fires, eyes half closed, watching the sparks rise and blur into stars. So tonight, when your thoughts begin to dissolve and the edges of the room fade, don't rush through that passage. Linger a little. Listen. There might be whispers in the static, hints of the worlds your mind is about to weave. You don't have to believe in anything supernatural to feel the wonder of that moment. You only have to notice it. The hush before the dream, the shimmer of two realities overlapping, and the gentle realization that you too are the traveller standing in the doorway. There's a moment in certain dreams when something quietly shifts. You might be walking through a place that feels familiar yet slightly wrong. A hallway that turns the wrong way. A sky with two moons. A reflection that moves before you do. And then, like the faint click of a light switch, awareness returns. You realize with a soft thrill that you are dreaming. The walls around you aren't walls at all, but thoughts. The air is not air, but imagination. You can move simply by deciding to. You have entered a lucid dream. Lucid dreaming sits at the crossroads of waking and sleeping, where consciousness becomes aware of itself inside the dream. For some people, it happens by accident, a sudden recognition in the middle of a strange night. For others, it's a skill honed through intention, reality checks, dream journals, meditative breathing. However it arrives, the experience feels magical. The dreamer becomes both the actor and the director, shaping the story from within. Scientists have confirmed that lucid dreams are not fantasy, but a measurable state of mind. In experiments, dreamers trained to move their eyes in a specific pattern when they became aware, a kind of signal to the outside world. While their bodies remained still, researchers could see the eyes flicking beneath closed lids in the exact rhythm agreed upon beforehand. The discovery was thrilling. It proved that self-awareness can exist even when the body's asleep, that a part of the mind remains awake enough to communicate across the border of worlds. To experience lucidity is to feel the rules of reality dissolve. You might rise into the air with no effort or shape the scenery like wet clay. Mountains can unfold like curtains. Oceans can turn to clouds. Some dreamers use this freedom playfully, soaring above cities, walking through walls, exploring impossible landscapes. Others use it for healing or creativity, confronting fears in a safe place, or practicing skills for waking life. The brain doesn't clearly separate imagined action from real rehearsal. To it, both are experiences, both form new connections. A pianist who dreams of playing music activates the same neural pathways as one sitting before a real instrument. But beneath the wonder lies something even more mysterious. When you become aware in a dream, who is the you that wakes up? It isn't the body that remains still and sleeping. It isn't quite the everyday self either, since the dream world operates on its own logic and memory. Some describe it as a deeper layer of consciousness, the silent observer behind both waking and dreaming life. It feels familiar, yet larger, like recognizing your own reflection in a river that runs through many lands. The ancient Greeks called this state theoria, a moment of divine contemplation. Tibetan monks practice a discipline known as dream yoga, training to maintain awareness through all stages of sleep. To them, lucidity isn't entertainment but enlightenment, a recognition that reality, waking or dreaming, is constructed by mind. The difference between illusion and truth, they say, is not in the scenery but in the clarity of the witness. From a neuroscientific view, lucidity seems to occur when certain regions of the brain, particularly those in the frontal lobes, momentarily reactivate during REM sleep. These are the areas responsible for reasoning and self-reflection, normally quiet while we dream. When they flicker back to life, the dreamer regains the ability to think, to question, to realize. But the imagery continues unhindered. The result is a strange duet, logic and imagination sharing the same stage. You might picture it as a spotlight turning on in the middle of a play, revealing the act to the audience, both roles played by the same mind. There's a gentle paradox here. The more control one seeks, the less fluid the dream becomes. The best lucid experiences come not from commanding, but from listening. The dream responds like a living organism, cooperative when approached with curiosity, elusive when forced. Many long-time lucid dreamers speak of an intelligence within the dream itself, something that seems to guide or teach. It may take the form of a person, a voice, or simply a knowing. Whether this presence is another part of the self or something beyond it is open to interpretation. But the feeling is unmistakable. The dream seems aware of being seen. Lucidity also offers a mirror for fear. Nightmares, when recognized, can transform. A chase can become a conversation. A fall can turn into flight. Psychologists studying recurrent nightmares have used lucid training to help patients gently face trauma. By realizing this is a dream, the mind learns to rewrite its own script, to create safety where once there was helplessness. The emotional relief can carry into waking life, easing anxiety, restoring a sense of agency. It's as if the dream world becomes a rehearsal space for courage. There's something profoundly human in our wish to stay conscious even in sleep, to bring light into the dark. Lucid dreaming embodies that impulse, the curiosity that asks, what if awareness never truly ends? Even as the body rests, consciousness continues exploring, creating, learning. Perhaps that's why lucid dreams often feel charged with joy. The exhilaration of freedom, yes, but also the recognition that you are more than the boundaries of flesh or circumstance. And yet lucidity isn't always bright. Sometimes awareness arrives in the middle of confusion or fear. You might awaken inside a collapsing world, or find yourself unable to change what unfolds. Even then, the experience can hold meaning. The dream reflects your emotional landscape, translating inner turbulence into vivid imagery. Understanding that it's your mind's own theatre allows compassion to replace panic. You become both participant and observer, the wave and the sea at once. If dreams are indeed portals to other versions of reality, then lucidity might be the first moment of true arrival, the instant when the traveller realises they are no longer home. Whether those realms are internal or cosmic, no one can say for certain. But every lucid dreamer knows the feeling of crossing some invisible line, stepping into a world that is both theirs and not theirs, held together by the thin gravity of attention. You can invite lucidity gently without forcing it. Keep a notebook by your bed. Each morning write even a few words about what you remember, fragments, feelings, colours. This act alone teaches your mind that dreams matter, that they are worth recalling. Before sleep, remind yourself softly, if I dream, I will notice that I'm dreaming. That seed of intention often blooms on its own. One night, perhaps weeks from now, you might glance at the sky of your dream and see a moon shaped like a clock, or colours no human eye has ever seen. You'll pause, smile, and think, ah, there it is. In that moment, you will have touched something timeless, a bridge between the inner universe and all the possible worlds beyond it. And whether you soar, walk, or simply stand still to watch, you'll know that consciousness never truly sleeps. It only changes the scenery. Close your eyes and imagine that somewhere inside your mind there is a map, not of the Earth, but of a different kind of landscape. The cities there do not appear on any satellite image. The mountains rise and vanish according to mood. The rivers flow in directions that seem to follow memory instead of gravity. Yet, somehow this place feels familiar. You have been there before. Many dreamers speak of this strange familiarity, the same streets and houses appearing again and again across the years, changing slightly but never disappearing entirely. A train station that always stands beneath a violet sky. A library with endless halls that seems to grow new wings each time you visit. A friend's house that does not exist in waking life, yet you know every creaking stair and faded wallpaper. These recurring dream places form what could almost be called geography, a topography of the mind, mapped not in miles but in emotions and symbols. Psychologists often explain this as the product of neural patterning. When your brain creates a certain type of dream setting, it uses a familiar network of cells. The next time those same pathways activate, the setting reappears. You might say the mind revisits its own blueprint, but there is something oddly persistent about these worlds. They seem to remember you. Streets lead back to where you left them. Landscapes evolve as if time had passed between visits. If dreams were truly random, how could there be continuity? Perhaps the answer lies in how the brain stores spatial memory. The hippocampus, that seahorse-shaped structure deep in the temporal lobe, builds maps not only of the outer world but of imagined ones. When you remember the layout of your home or picture a walk through a city you once loved, the hippocampus lights up with gentle waves of electrical rhythm, like tiny lanterns flickering along a path. During REM sleep, those same lanterns glow again, retracing familiar routes while weaving new ones. This internal cartography may explain why dream landscapes can seem so stable. The brain, in its search for coherence, reuses the same architecture. Still, the emotional depth of these places feels larger than any biological mechanism. There's a reason we call them dream worlds. They carry the weight of history, the sense of continuity that defines a real place. You might wake with the feeling that you could return tomorrow and find the same tree still standing, the same cafe still open, the same ocean still whispering at the shore. Some dreamers even report changes over time. A shop closing, a bridge rebuilt, as though the world continues without them. It raises a quiet, fascinating question. Do our dreams wait for us? In ancient cultures, this idea was accepted without hesitation. The Aboriginal people of Australia spoke of the dreaming, not as imagination, but as an eternal layer of reality that coexists with the waking world. The soul, they believed, travels there each night, keeping contact with ancestral lands that shape both myth and memory. In many indigenous American traditions, dreams are journeys to parallel realms where spirits and ancestors dwell. The geography of those realms mirrors Earth's but operates by different rules, a symbolic counterpart to the material world. From a scientific standpoint, we can frame this as the mind's spatial simulation engine, reassembling bits of experience into coherent virtual space. But seen another way, these internal landscapes might be far more than simulation. They could be reflections of deeper structures, the architecture of consciousness itself. Just as every crystal grows along invisible lines of order, maybe awareness builds its worlds along patterns too ancient and vast for us to measure. There is a quiet beauty in the way these places hold our emotions. A recurring dream of a school may echo not the building, but the feeling of learning or belonging. A recurring forest may carry both safety and mystery, the mind's way of painting the inner self in the language of terrain. You could say that each of us is an entire continent of remembered feeling, and dreams are the weather that moves across it. Sometimes these familiar dreamscapes overlap between people. Two friends might describe a strangely similar place, a vast hallway, a seaside town under perpetual twilight. Coincidence, perhaps? Or maybe we all draw from the same archetypal well of imagery, what Carl Jung once called the collective unconscious. In his view, these shared symbols are like recurring landforms in the landscape of humanity's mind, mountains of meaning rising again and again through different dreamers. They represent universal experiences: safety, danger, rebirth, freedom. But what if these similarities point to something more interconnected? If consciousness is not isolated inside the skull but part of a broader field, then the dream world might be a shared dimension, a psychological internet connecting many minds through emotion and metaphor. When two dreamers find themselves walking the same street under the same impossible sky, it may not be proof of a shared location, but it is certainly evidence of a shared capacity for wonder. Exploring your dream geography can become a gentle practice. When you wake, write down the details, not just what you saw but how it felt, the colour of the light, the temperature of the air, the texture beneath your feet. Over time, patterns appear. You may realise that certain places arise when you feel joyful, others when you feel burdened. Your mind uses architecture as language, and learning that language can be profoundly revealing. The hilltop you always climb might represent aspiration, the locked door, hesitation. None of this requires believing that dreams are literal portals. It's enough to sense that they are real experiences, ones that follow the laws of emotional gravity rather than physical gravity. Just as planets orbit according to unseen forces, our dreamscapes orbit around feelings and memories. The physics of that world is the physics of meaning. In quiet moments, you might wonder whether somewhere these landscapes persist, sustained by the energy of thought, by the patterns of neural symphony humming beneath the skull. The atoms of the body rest, but the patterns of energy continue. And perhaps, in those patterns, a forest remains alive, a city waits beneath starlight, a river keeps flowing through the country of your mind. When you return to those places, and you will someday, they will feel as familiar as home. And maybe that's what they are. Homes built from consciousness, not from matter. The places you visit when your waking body sleeps, where memory and imagination meet halfway. Worlds not less real for being invisible, but more subtle, shaped not by stone or soil, but by thought itself. Every so often, in a dream, you meet someone who seems to know more than you do. They look at you with quiet familiarity, as if they've been waiting. Maybe it's an old man sitting on a train, a friend you don't quite remember having, or a woman whose words echo long after you wake. Sometimes they give advice, sometimes they simply smile, and other times they ask a question that stays with you for years. These are the teachers within, figures born from the same mind that dreams the landscape, yet somehow wiser than the one who wakes. In many lucid dreams, people describe meeting such presences. They feel distinct from the dreamer, independent, even surprised to learn they are part of a dream. "You made me," one might say, or sometimes, "I was here before you." The conversation feels real, the cadence of speech, the subtle rhythm of personality. Neurologically, it's all generated by the same brain that's sleeping in bed. But emotionally, it feels as if another consciousness is speaking through the same channel, one whose voice carries both mystery and tenderness. Psychologists interpret these characters as aspects of the self, fragments of personality, subconscious thoughts given form. When you dream of a mentor, they say, you're watching your own intuition step forward wearing a friendly face. That's true in a way. The brain stores knowledge not as words but as networks of associations, connections that cross memory, emotion, and reasoning. During dreams, when the rational filters quiet down, these networks can express themselves more directly. A lesson that your waking mind has resisted might appear instead as a conversation, a story, a figure offering guidance. Yet that explanation doesn't make the experience any less profound. It might even make it more so. Imagine your own mind as a vast library, not a neat, ordered one, but a living labyrinth of ideas and emotions. Most days you walk only a few familiar aisles. In dreams, the lights flicker on in forgotten wings, revealing librarians you never knew were there. They speak in metaphors, but their meaning is often precise. Slow down. You already know. This isn't the end. Advice from the self delivered in yet the only language the sleeping brain can use, imagery and emotion. In ancient cultures, these inner teachers were never dismissed as mere illusions. The Greeks believed that dream figures could be messengers of the gods, intermediaries between human reason and divine insight. In shamanic traditions across the world, dream guides were honoured as spirit allies, entities that could heal, warn, or instruct. The line between psychological and spiritual blurred completely. The human mind was understood as a bridge, not a boundary. Carl Jung, the Swiss psychologist, saw these figures as archetypes, universal symbols that arise from what he called the collective unconscious, a shared layer of humanity's psyche. To him, a wise figure in a dream was the embodiment of the archetype of the sage, just as a child might represent innocence or renewal, and a shadowy pursuer might represent repressed fear. He believed these archetypes weren't just metaphors but patterns deeply rooted in the structure of being human, inherited the way we inherit language or instinct, and still, some experiences go beyond interpretation. Many dreamers describe encounters that feel far too coherent, too specific to be simple projection. They might receive knowledge that proves accurate, a detail they couldn't have known, an idea that later helps them solve a real problem. Skeptics call it coincidence, and perhaps it is. But even coincidence, when viewed closely, can shimmer with meaning. From a neurological view, there's a plausible mechanism. The brain is an extraordinary pattern finder, even while asleep. It can make connections between pieces of information scattered across memory, fragments of experience that the waking self has never consciously linked. In the dream, these fragments gather into a story, and that story can reveal something new. The teacher figure is simply the voice of that synthesis, the mind's way of presenting insight to itself. Like an old friend appearing in a film to deliver one perfect line before fading into the background. Yet, there's another possibility, quieter but more daring. What if consciousness isn't confined to one individual mind at all? What if the figures we meet in dreams are not only parts of ourselves, but intersections, points where our awareness touches something greater, a shared field of intelligence that moves through us all? In that view, the teacher within might also be the teacher without, the universe, speaking in a language we can understand only when the noise of daily life has faded. Such ideas might sound mystical, but they carry a simple comfort. They remind us that wisdom doesn't have to arrive from outside. It can emerge naturally from within, like groundwater rising through cracks in stone. Whether the source is brain or cosmos, the effect is the same: clarity, guidance, peace. Dreams can be classrooms, and every dreamer both student and teacher. If you want to meet these inner guides more consciously, a few gentle practices can help. Keep a small notebook by your bed. Before sleep, write a simple question, not one of logic, but of heart. Something like, what am I not seeing clearly? Or, what do I need to release? Then, as you fall asleep, repeat the question softly like a mantra. Don't demand an answer, just let it settle. Often within a few nights, an image or phrase will surface in a dream. You'll know it when you feel it, not as a loud revelation, but as a quiet certainty that something inside you has spoken. Lucid dreamers sometimes take this a step further, asking questions directly within the dream. They describe feeling the environment itself respond, the air shimmering, a voice echoing from nowhere, or a figure stepping forward with a smile. The advice they receive can be as simple as trust yourself, or as cryptic as a riddle that only makes sense days later. Whether these moments come from neurons or from some shared field of consciousness, they tend to leave the same impression: humility, wonder, and an almost childlike gratitude. When you wake from such dreams, hold on to that feeling, even if the words fade. Insight doesn't need to be remembered perfectly to change you. It seeps quietly into the way you move, the tone of your thoughts, the gentleness of your choices. And perhaps that is the real gift of these inner teachers, not that they tell us new things, but that they remind us of what we already knew before the noise of waking life made us forget. So tonight, when you close your eyes and find yourself walking through some imagined city or forest, keep an open heart. If you meet someone who seems to know you better than you know yourself, don't rush to analyze. Listen. Let the conversation unfold the way a dream unfolds, slowly, softly, without edges. And when you wake, even if you can't recall their face, you may still carry the warmth of their presence, a gentle echo from the deeper layers of your own mind, whispering that knowledge is not something you seek, but something that has always been there, waiting for you to notice. Imagine standing in the middle of a dream, fully aware that everything around you is made of thought. You lift your hand and the clouds ripple like fabric. You speak and the landscape shifts to answer. It feels almost divine, this quiet ability to shape entire worlds with a gesture. But as you stand there, another thought arises. If the dream feels real, if the people inside it seem alive, then what does it mean to change them, to create them, to destroy them when morning comes? Lucid dreamers often speak of this strange weight, the realization that absolute freedom carries its own kind of responsibility. The mind, when unbound, can build kingdoms of light or caverns of shadow, and within those creations move characters who laugh, grieve, argue, and smile as if they were real. It's easy to tell. Yourself, they're only illusions. Yet in the moment, they possess their own integrity, their own spark. When you look into their eyes, something looks back. Psychologists might describe these dream people as extensions of the self, clusters of emotion and memory given temporary form. But knowing that doesn't dissolve the feeling that they matter. After all, when you speak to a loved one in waking life, their face is also an image formed inside your mind. The emotional reality exists whether or not the setting is physical. So within the lucid dream, compassion remains relevant, not because the other is truly separate, but because kindness shapes the dreamer too. There's an old saying among Tibetan dream yogis, "The world is your mind made visible." If that's true, then every act of cruelty, even in imagination, leaves an imprint. The practice, then, is not domination of the dream, but harmony with it. Advanced practitioners describe learning to interact with dream beings gently, to ask permission before altering a scene, to listen before deciding. Over time, the dream ceases to feel like a sandbox and begins to feel like a shared ecosystem, alive with its own subtle intelligence. You could think of it like tending a garden. The soil, the plants, the insects, all part of one living system, each responding to care or neglect. The gardener can't control the rain, but they can guide growth through attention. In the same way, awareness inside the dream doesn't mean ruling over it. It means cooperating with what appears, understanding that every creation mirrors an inner truth. If you build with fear, the dream reflects fear. If you build with curiosity or love, it unfolds into beauty. Some lucid dreamers have found that even nightmares change when approached with empathy. A monster chasing them stops to talk when they turn around. A storm quiets when they breathe calmly. One dreamer described meeting a dark, featureless figure that had haunted her for years. When she finally faced it and asked, "What are you trying to show me?" the figure dissolved into light and said, "I am your strength." Whether that voice was her subconscious or something beyond, the effect was profound. The dream became an act of reconciliation. This touches something ancient, the notion that how we behave in unseen realms affects who we are in the visible world. In Greek mythology, the god Hypnos ruled over the realm of sleep, guiding mortals through visions that tested their virtue. The idea wasn't punishment, but revelation, dreams as mirrors of moral character. In a similar spirit, modern lucid dreamers sometimes use their nights as ethical laboratories, testing patience, forgiveness, and humility in scenarios unconstrained by consequence. The results often echo back into waking life. It's also worth considering the philosophical question: what is the value of an action in a world that exists only as experience? If you rescue someone in a dream, if you offer kindness, does it matter once you wake? The answer might depend on what we mean by real. If reality is defined solely by physical permanence, perhaps not. But if reality is defined by consciousness, by the feelings and awareness that arise within it, then a dream act is as real as any other. The compassion you feel is genuine, the courage, the regret, the joy, all leave imprints on the nervous system, subtle changes in the patterns of the brain's electrical song. Some neuroscientists describe learning and emotion as changes in connection, strength between cells, but we can think of it more softly. Each experience, waking or dreaming, reshapes the inner landscape a little, like rain carving channels through sand. You wake not as exactly the same person who fell asleep. Even if the dream fades, the impression remains. This view can transform how we approach the dream world. Instead of a playground, it becomes a place of stewardship. Instead of conquest, collaboration. The lucid dreamer becomes both traveller and caretaker, aware that each thought carries weight, each intention ripples outward. Just as ecological awareness teaches us to honour the planet that sustains life, dream awareness invites us to honour the inner worlds that sustain meaning. There is also the subtle temptation of power. Some dreamers speak of creating entire civilizations, cities of glass and music, worlds of perfect symmetry, companions who never contradict. At first it feels euphoric, but soon something changes. The world loses depth, the characters become flat, the perfection becomes sterile. It's as if the dream resists being controlled, reminding the dreamer that beauty thrives on surprise. Without uncertainty, imagination withers. Without humility, creation becomes empty. The most fulfilling lucid experiences, paradoxically, are those that retain mystery, when the dream feels like a conversation rather than a command. In that sense, lucid dreaming mirrors the larger human condition. We too move through a shared world that responds to our thoughts and actions in ways both visible and invisible. We shape reality through perception, language, and care. The question, "What should I do?" becomes, "What kind of world do I wish to live in?" And perhaps that's the same question a lucid dreamer asks every night before closing their eyes. You don't need to master lucid control to feel this responsibility. Simply remembering a dream can carry the same insight. Notice how it felt to be inside, what choices you made, what emotions coloured the landscape. Each dream reflects not just random noise, but your relationship with your own awareness. It shows how you move through uncertainty, how you respond to beauty, how you treat the beings that your mind creates. In that mirror, you can see your waking self more clearly. When you next drift into a dream and realize you can shape it, pause for a moment. Feel the ground beneath your feet, even if it's made of light. Look around at the figures moving through that world, the wind, the stars. Ask quietly, what does this place need from me? Sometimes the answer will be nothing, only silence, only witness. Sometimes it will be compassion, forgiveness, or wonder. Whatever arises, let it guide your actions. Because in the end, whether the dream is a neuron song or a universe's echo, it is still a world, one where love, curiosity, and respect are as powerful as they are anywhere else. And if the multiverse truly exists, if every possibility is unfolding somewhere, then every kind choice you make, even in sleep, might send its warmth across realities you'll never see, rippling through the vastness like a gentle wave. There are nights when you fall asleep for only a few minutes and wake feeling as though entire years have passed. You might remember growing older, learning, even living an entire life within a dream's borders. And when morning comes, the clock on your nightstand insists that no more than 10 minutes have slipped away. Time in dreams does not behave like time in the waking world. It stretches, folds, and collapses in ways that feel both bewildering and strangely natural, like water cupped in the hands that leaks through no matter how tightly you try to hold it. Scientists studying sleep have tried to understand this elasticity. They observe that during REM sleep, the same stage where vivid dreams occur, the brain's sense of rhythm changes. In waking life, the mind measures time by external cues, the movement of shadows, the ticking of seconds, the regular heartbeat of the world. But in sleep, those anchors disappear. What remains is a purely internal clock, one that runs not on seconds but on associations. How quickly thoughts flow, how strongly emotions rise and fall. The tempo of experience becomes subjective. Moments expand or contract depending on how much meaning they carry. It's as if your mind has its own gravity, pulling the minutes into strange orbits. A dream can contain long journeys, complex conversations, even entire lifetimes, because the brain compresses events the way a storyteller skips through time. In waking life, you might recall an entire year in a single sentence. Last summer was wonderful, and your mind fills the gap with summary rather than detail. In dreams, that summarizing faculty runs the show. Whole ages can be folded into a handful of images, and yet they feel complete. Neuroscientists sometimes call this temporal compression, but the phrase sounds mechanical, missing the poetry of the experience. What's really happening might be closer to a kind of mental acceleration, the networks that generate associations, linking sights, sounds, emotions, speed up when freed from the body's normal constraints. If your waking mind moves like a river, your dreaming mind becomes a waterfall. Thoughts tumble faster, connections spark quicker, and each instant holds more meaning. The result is an illusion of long duration, but perhaps illusion is not the right word. Inside the dream, it is real time, the only time that exists. There have been attempts to measure this. In laboratory studies, lucid dreamers have been trained to signal with specific eye movements when they begin counting seconds inside a dream. When awakened, they're asked how much time they believe passed. The results are curious. Sometimes their inner counting matches real time almost perfectly. Other times, the dream seems to have lasted twice as long or half as short. The dream's internal clock appears to be flexible, influenced by the intensity of experience. When the dream is rich and emotional, the sense of time lengthens. When it's simple or repetitive, it shrinks. If you've ever had a nightmare, you know this feeling intimately. A single moment of falling, of fear can seem to stretch forever. The same mechanism that compresses a lifetime of joy can expand a second of terror. The mind, unbound from physical constraints, measures time not by motion but by meaning. In that sense, our dreams may reveal something fundamental about consciousness itself, that time is not a river we drift through, but a fabric we weave from attention. Consider how memory behaves in waking life. A busy day filled with novelty seems long while it happens, but feels short in hindsight. Routine days, by contrast, pass quickly in the moment, but leave long, dull stretches in memory. Dreams mimic this duality. Their events feel enormous while they unfold, but collapse to a few fragments upon waking. The brain, while dreaming, stores only the emotional essence, the peaks of feeling, the colours of intensity, not the long continuity that made them. When you wake, the film reel has been edited down to a trailer. And yet sometimes, a dream leaves behind the echo of lived time. People have woken from dreams of entire other lives, with memories, families, even languages they didn't know. The details fade, but the weight of experience lingers, a phantom nostalgia for a life never lived. Science calls this false memory integration, the mind's ability to stitch fragments into cohesive narrative. But perhaps it's equally true to call it a glimpse into parallel identity, a brief tuning to a different version of oneself in another timeline. If the multiverse theory holds that infinite realities exist, maybe dreams are how consciousness samples a few of them before returning home. That idea might sound extravagant, but even physics has begun to blur the lines between time, perception, and probability. Quantum experiments suggest that the act of observation itself influences when and how events occur, as though the universe waits for attention before deciding its sequence. Translated softly, that means time may be less absolute than we imagine, more like a melody that changes depending on how you listen. Dreams could be the mind's way of hearing that melody in a different key. Whether or not such theories prove true, the emotional truth of time's elasticity in dreams is undeniable. Everyone has felt it, the way an entire adventure dissolves when the alarm rings, leaving only the faintest dust of memory. Yet within those few sleeping minutes, something vast unfolded. The brain, the heart, the imagination, all collaborated to create a story that seemed to last for hours or years. And in that illusion, or perhaps that alternate reality, you lived. It raises a gentle question. What if every night we truly do step into other lifetimes? What if those worlds continue while we are awake, their versions of us dreaming back at ours in return? Perhaps each breath here is a heartbeat there, each heartbeat here an hour somewhere else. Time, like consciousness, might not be linear at all, but circular, layered, a great wheel turning through endless now. Even without cosmic speculation, the experience itself holds meaning. It reminds us that time is not the rigid ruler we think it is. It bends to perception, to emotion, to attention. When we are joyful, it flies. When we are sorrowful, it slows. Dreams simply amplify that truth until we can see it plainly. They show us that our sense of time is not something the universe gives us, but something we create. So the next time you wake from a dream that seemed to last forever, don't dismiss it as trickery of the mind. You have touched the pliability of reality, felt the way consciousness sculpts duration out of thought. In that space, you are both mortal and eternal, a being made of minutes, capable of holding eternity in a sigh. And perhaps that is the secret gift of the sleeping mind, to remind us that even within the briefest heartbeat, an entire world can unfold, and that the vastness we seek across galaxies might already exist in the folds of our own perception, waiting to be dreamed into being again. There are moments in life that feel like soft repetitions, tiny echoes from somewhere beyond the present. You turn a corner, see a stranger's face, hear a phrase, and suddenly every fibre of your being whispers, "I've been here before." Yet you know, with equal certainty, that you have not. That shimmer of familiarity is called déjà vu, and it carries the same haunting quality as a half-remembered dream. Scientists have tried to map this sensation. They find that déjà vu often arises when the brain's memory circuits briefly misfire. The region that checks familiarity, deep inside a curve of tissue called the hippocampus, lights up as though a new experience were old. It's a false alarm, a recognition without source. But such an explanation, while neat, does not capture the quiet mystery of the feeling. It's not simply an error. It feels personal, as though some other version of you has already stood in that same spot, looked at the same horizon, and then slipped away. Dream researchers have long noticed how frequently déjà vu connects to dreams. People often realise that what felt familiar in waking life mirrors a dream they once had, sometimes forgotten until the moment returns. The event becomes a point of overlap between timelines, one lived while awake, the other while asleep. The mind, it seems, does not keep the boundaries as tidy as we imagine. It stores experience like overlapping layers of paint, and now and then, the older colours shine through. If dreams are indeed simulations built from memory, then déjà vu might simply be a side effect of that architecture, the brain briefly confusing which layer of the simulation it's in. But there is a more romantic interpretation, that these overlaps are crossfades between worlds, brief moments when two versions of reality align. The feeling of "I've been here" becomes not a malfunction, but a signal, a whisper that somewhere, in another strand of existence, you truly have. False awakenings offer another glimpse of this strange structure. You dream that you wake up, stretch, check the time, perhaps begin your morning routine, only to discover, moments later, that you are still asleep. You awaken again, relieved, only to find that too was a dream. These nested loops can feel uncanny, even terrifying. They blur the boundary between sleeping and waking until you no longer know which state you inhabit. In laboratory terms, false awakenings occur when the brain partially activates its wakeful systems while dream imagery continues. It's like a theatre where the lights come on before the players ended, stage and audience mixed together. Yet the sensation can be deeply philosophical. Within such loops, time and reality lose hierarchy. Each layer believes itself the real one. To escape, you must simply decide to wake, and that decision alone becomes proof of awareness. Many cultures once treated such experiences as visits to parallel planes. In ancient India, the philosopher Shankara compared waking and dreaming to reflections within a hall of mirrors. Each seems independent, yet each arises from the same luminous source. In modern language, you might picture the mind as a set of nested programs, each capable of simulating the other. When you dream that you wake, the system simply opens another window within itself, the same consciousness gazing through a new frame. Cinema often mirrors this feeling. Think of scenes where the hero walks down a hallway of mirrors or endless corridors folding back upon themselves. These images resonate because they capture something we already know intuitively, that consciousness can contain itself, like reflections multiplying between glass panes. And when the reflections align perfectly, even for an instant, they create the sensation of infinity, perhaps the same vertigo we feel during déjà vu or a false awakening. Quantum physics, softly translated, offers an elegant metaphor. The many worlds interpretation suggests that every possibility that can happen does happen, each choice branching into a separate timeline, like waves rippling outward from a single stone. When two ripples meet, they interfere, briefly amplifying each other before continuing apart. If consciousness exists within this sea of possibilities, then déjà vu might be one of those interference points. A moment when two timelines overlap, allowing memory to echo across realities. Of course, there is no experiment to prove this yet. It remains poetry dressed in physics. But the imagery feels right. The experience of déjà vu is not loud or dramatic. It's a soft resonance, a tiny chord struck between the known and the unknown. For a heartbeat, you sense your life not as a line, but as a vast web, its threads shimmering with pasts and futures that touch only occasionally, and when they do, the contact feels electric. False awakenings share that electric quality. They remind us that certainty itself is fragile. You can dream of waking a dozen times and each will feel as real as the last. The only difference is perspective, the level of awareness. Perhaps the universe itself functions the same way, layers upon layers, each convinced it is the final truth, until another layer opens. In that view, awakening is not a single event, but a continuous deepening, an infinite staircase we ascend one lucid step at a time. Dreamers who practice lucidity often use false awakenings as training grounds. They learn to test reality gently, to look at their hands, to switch a light on and off, to ask, "Am I dreaming?" These small acts become mindfulness in its purest form, awareness questioning itself. The boundary between worlds becomes a place of practice rather than fear. You might even say that life itself, with all its repetitions and coincidences, offers the same exercise. Every moment of déjà vu can serve as a subtle bell, ringing to remind you to wake a little more. When scientists measure the brain during such experiences, they find no singular anomaly, no code hidden in the neurons. Instead, they find ordinary mechanisms creating extraordinary feelings. But the absence of proof is not the absence of wonder. Knowing that déjà vu arises from memory circuits, misfiring does not make it less magical. It makes the brain more astonishing. That a handful of cells can recreate the sensation of eternity is its own quiet miracle. And so, when that shiver of familiarity comes, you don't have to solve it. You can simply notice it. The gentle tug of another timeline brushing against yours. When you wake from a false awakening, smile at the realization that even your dreams can dream. In those brief folds of perception, the universe shows you its mirrors, layers of experience reflecting endlessly, inviting you to wonder which one, if any, is the original. Perhaps there isn't one. Perhaps reality is a hall of mirrors with no beginning or end, only the light of consciousness moving from reflection to reflection, learning to recognize itself each time it awakens. Every night, millions of people close their eyes and wander into invisible worlds, each believing their dreams are private. Yet sometimes those worlds seem to overlap. Two people might wake with stories that match. A strange city beneath a pink sky, a conversation with the same unfamiliar stranger, a melody neither has ever heard before, yet both can hum. These moments, though rare, stir something deep, the possibility that our dreams are not sealed inside us, but part of a larger field that our minds visit together. Throughout history, such stories have quietly followed humanity. Ancient Greeks wrote of dream oracles who could enter shared visions to receive messages from the gods. In some indigenous traditions, entire tribes practiced dream councils, gathering at dawn to share the landscapes they had explored in sleep. When several people dreamed of the same mountain, the same animal, or the same river, it was seen as a sign that consciousness itself had moved through a shared terrain. In the early 20th century, as psychology and spiritualism mingled, the term mutual dreaming appeared, an attempt to describe those nights when two minds seem to meet beyond the border of the physical world. Science, of course, approaches such claims cautiously. Controlled studies of dream telepathy have rarely produced consistent results. When researchers ask dreamers to focus on a shared image before sleeping, the matches that follow can usually be explained by chance or by the brain's natural tendency to find patterns. And yet, even skeptics admit something curious. Human minds are exceptionally good at synchronizing. We mirror each other's breathing, emotions, and thoughts so subtly that our neural rhythms can align. Two people in deep rapport can show matching patterns of brainwaves, tiny oscillations moving in harmony like ripples from different stones meeting on the same pond. If such resonance can happen while awake, who's to say it cannot happen in sleep? You can think of consciousness not as a series of isolated lights, but as one great sea of awareness, with each of us a wave upon its surface. When we sleep, the barriers between waves grow thin, our identities loosen. The mind drifts deeper into the shared ocean, where memories, emotions, and symbols swirl freely. There, it's easy to imagine two currents crossing, exchanging images the way tides exchange shells and seaweed. When we wake, we call that exchange coincidence, but in the dream, it feels like recognition. Some modern experiments have tried to capture this phenomenon more gently, through what might be called citizen science. Groups of dreamers around the world record their dreams each morning and share them online. Patterns sometimes appear, similar imagery around global events, shared symbols on certain nights, collective themes of water, fire, or flight. It may all be psychology, the collective subconscious responding to shared news and mood. But perhaps it's also proof of something deeper, that we're tuned to the same invisible frequency. In physics, there's a concept called resonance, when two objects vibrating at similar frequencies amplify each other's sound. Think of how one tuning fork can make another start humming across the room. In human terms, resonance is empathy. It's what happens when you sense someone's mood before they speak, or when music makes a crowd breathe in rhythm. If the mind operates as a field of subtle vibration, thoughts, feelings, and memories all woven from patterns of energy, then dreaming might be the purest expression of resonance, consciousness vibrating without the noise of the body. This doesn't mean that your dream partner from last night is objectively real in the physical sense, but it does mean the experience is real to your nervous system. The conversation, the shared laughter, the moment of eye contact, they produce genuine emotional and physiological responses. If consciousness is indeed fundamental, if it extends beyond the skull, then perhaps connection is not limited by space or time. The dream could be a meeting place, a shared room inside the mansion of mind. Carl Jung believed in something similar, though he called it the collective unconscious, a shared reservoir of archetypes and symbols common to all humanity. According to him, when two people dream of the same motif, a flood, a serpent, a guiding light, they're drawing from that deeper well. It's less about communication between individuals and more about touching the same universal source. The dream becomes a kind of mirror, reflecting the themes that unite us as a species: fear, love, curiosity, transformation. Even from a strictly biological view, shared dreaming can make sense. Human brains are pattern machines. We all live under the same sky, influenced by the same collective concerns: weather, technology, anxiety, hope. It's natural that our subconsciouses would compose similar imagery. During the pandemic, for example, people across continents reported dreaming of invisible threats, locked doors, or flooded cities. The connection wasn't telepathic but emotional, a chorus of minds processing the same uncertainty in their own symbolic language. Yet even that, in its own way, is collective dreaming, empathy expressed through metaphor. For those who wish to explore this further, there's a gentle way to try. Choose someone you trust, a partner, a friend, even a distant companion across time zones. Before sleep, agree on a place to meet in the dream: a meadow, a library, a cafe by the sea. Close your eyes and picture it clearly. Don't force anything, simply invite the image to settle. In the morning, compare notes. More often than not, your experiences will differ, but occasionally there will be echoes, a colour, a sound, a feeling that matches. Whether coincidence or connection, it will remind you of something precious, that we are not as separate as we seem. shared dreams also happen spontaneously, especially among those deeply bonded, twins, long-term partners, parents and children. Perhaps emotional closeness acts as a bridge, aligning mental rhythms so that the dreamscapes begin to rhyme. It's not unlike musicians improvising from the same key. Each plays their own melody, but together they create harmony. Even if they never meet in the same room of the dream, they may still feel each other's presence as warmth, a subtle awareness of company in the dark. Ultimately, shared dreaming, whether literal or symbolic, points to the same truth. Consciousness is relational, it flourishes in connection. When you tell someone your dream, and they tell you theirs, the two merge into something larger, a collective story. Each of you adds light to the same constellation. Whether the link happens in the realm of neurons or in the invisible ocean of awareness, the effect is the same, a sense of belonging, of being part of a living network of minds. So tonight, as you drift towards sleep, imagine that your dreams are not solitary films, but chapters in a great anthology, written by countless dreamers across the world. Somewhere, another person might be wandering through a similar landscape, feeling the same wind, wondering the same questions. And though you may never meet, for a few soft hours you might walk beneath the same invisible sky, two sparks gliding across the same current, quietly recognizing each other in the dark. If you've ever watched a child wake from sleep, you'll notice something adults often forget how to do, that gentle hesitation before returning to the world. Their eyes open slowly, unfocused, as if they're still half inside another place. Sometimes they smile at something invisible, or mumble a few words that make no sense to anyone else. It's as if the dream is still clinging to them, reluctant to let go. Children are natural dreamers. Their minds haven't yet built all the walls that adults rely on, the partitions between real and imagined, past and future, self and other. Their inner worlds flow easily into the outer one. Ask a child about a dream, and they might tell you about a talking river, or how they met their grandmother up in the clouds, or how last night they flew to a playground made of light. To them, none of it seems unusual. The boundary between worlds is still soft. Neuroscience offers a simple reason for this openness. In early childhood, the brain is still wiring itself together. Billions of connections are being formed and pruned, tested and replaced. It's a time of incredible flexibility, what scientists call plasticity, though the word sounds too rigid for something so alive. Because their brains are still learning, which signals matter most. Children experience the world through a broader lens. They notice patterns adults overlook. Their imagination is not yet a decoration, it's a mode of perception. In dreams, this flexibility becomes even more apparent. The same neural pathways used for play and storytelling during the day light up during REM sleep at night. The part of the brain that anchors logic and skepticism, the quiet gatekeeper that says this isn't possible, hasn't fully taken charge yet. As a result, a child can move from one reality to another as effortlessly as turning a page in a picture book. To them, the laws of gravity, time, and even identity are fluid. A toy can speak, a cloud can become a friend, and they themselves can shift shape without fear. Developmental psychologists see this as a vital training ground. Dreaming helps children rehearse emotions, practice problem solving, and integrate experiences that are too complex for waking understanding. A frightening event during the day might reappear in a dream, softened into symbol. A dark forest instead of a loud argument, a storm instead of loneliness. The child's mind learns to weave safety back into chaos, one image at a time. It's an emotional workshop disguised as magic. But beyond psychology, there's a deeper poetry to how children dream. Many cultures speak of the young as travellers who've only recently crossed from another realm. In certain Native American traditions, children are thought to carry memories of the spirit world for their first few years, before language and logic make them forget. In Tibet, Reincarnation stories often begin with children describing places or people they couldn't possibly know. Whether one interprets these accounts literally or symbolically, they point to the same mystery, that the youngest minds seem closest to something infinite. Even in modern times, there are curious stories. A child dreams of a place they've never been, then recognizes it years later on a family trip. Another speaks of imaginary friends who share detailed knowledge no one taught them. Science approaches such tales with caution, as it should, but their emotional truth still matters. They remind us that imagination and memory may not be as separate as we assume, that perhaps the mind, when unguarded, can reach further than reason allows. Think of how often children dream of flying, not in machines or vehicles, but with their own bodies, soaring over rooftops, drifting among clouds, weightless and laughing. Psychologists say it reflects freedom and developing self-confidence. Yet there's something archetypal about it too, a collective memory of movement without constraint. Maybe that's why even adults decades later still dream of flight. Some part of us remembers what it felt like to be unbound. There's also a unique honesty in the way children recount their dreams. They tell the story as if it really happened, without embarrassment or the need to explain. To them, real simply means experienced. This innocence is what allows their dream worlds to thrive. They do not divide the universe into believable and unbelievable, and in that lack of division lies a kind of wisdom. As we grow older, we learn to filter. The logical mind strengthens its walls, protecting us from confusion, but also from wonder. We become experts at naming things, at separating dream from daylight. It's necessary, of course. Civilization runs on shared agreement. But sometimes, in moments of quiet or exhaustion, we catch a glimpse of what children live with every day, a universe still alive with possibility. The psychologist Jean Piaget once wrote that a child does not simply play, they build entire systems of meaning through play. In the same way, a child's dreams are not random but integrative. They weave together everything the day offered, reshaping it into stories that make emotional sense. One could say that for children, dreaming and waking are parts of the same story, two alternating chapters of the same ongoing tale. If you've ever comforted a child after a nightmare, you've seen how real those emotions are. Their heartbeat races, their voice trembles, and tears spill freely. Yet as you hold them, speaking softly, the fear begins to dissolve. The mind learns that safety can return even after terror. That lesson, embedded deep within the nervous system, becomes a foundation for resilience. Dreams teach the body what words cannot, that endings can become beginnings and darkness can turn into dawn. As we age, that openness narrows, but it never disappears. Inside every adult lives the child who once crossed freely between worlds. When you daydream, when you lose yourself in music or memory, when you wake from a vivid dream that feels impossibly real, that is the open gate stirring again. It may not be as wide as before, but it still exists, waiting to be remembered. So tonight, if you dream of something impossible, of speaking animals, of glowing skies, of loved ones long gone, try not to wake with skepticism. Instead, wake with gratitude. The same gate that children walk through so easily still stands inside you. It never closed, it only grew quieter. And maybe that's what wisdom truly is. Not the building of more walls, but the gentle rediscovery of doorways we once knew by heart. When you dream, countless possibilities unfold at once. You might be walking through your old neighbourhood, yet the houses shimmer with unfamiliar colours. Your best friend has a new voice, and gravity feels lighter, as though the air itself remembers another set of rules. Each dream carries this paradox. It feels both invented and inevitable, both your creation and something you've simply stumbled into. It's as if your mind is showing you alternate versions of reality, nearby worlds reflected through a prism of thought. Physicists have a name for this kind of possibility. They call it the many worlds interpretation, a view born from the strange behaviour of particles at the smallest scales. In the laboratory, when a particle can take several paths, say through one doorway or another, it seems to choose both until an observer looks. Rather than picking a single outcome, the universe might allow all of them to exist simultaneously, each in its own branch of reality. Every event in this view doesn't erase other options, it multiplies them. Every choice is a ripple expanding into infinite directions. That idea, when translated softly, feels familiar to dreamers. Each night, consciousness drifts away from one version of life and slips into another. There, you can make decisions that don't exist in daylight, paths not taken, lives unlived. Perhaps those dream versions of you are more than metaphor. Perhaps they are echoes of neighbouring selves, separated not by distance but by frequency. Of course, the many worlds theory was not meant to explain dreams. It arose from quantum mathematics, not psychology. But physics and imagination often meet in the same place: curiosity about what is real. In a quantum experiment, probabilities dance together until attention collapses them into a single outcome. In the theatre of the mind, images do the same. Endless possibilities condense into one vivid narrative we call a dream. You could say that the dreamer is the observer, choosing which universe to visit each night. Picture it this way. Imagine dropping a pebble into still water. The ripples spread outward, overlapping and fading until only one remains visible. That final ripple is the version of reality you wake into, but all the others still move, unseen, beyond the horizon. Dreams may be our way of sensing those invisible waves, brief glimpses into the infinite alternatives our lives could have taken. This idea has a poetic symmetry with the way the brain itself works. Every thought you have begins as a cloud of electrical potential, billions of neurons whispering possibilities before settling on a single pattern. Each decision, to move, to speak, to remember, begins as a superposition, a word physicists use to describe overlapping states that exist until one becomes real. Translated gently, superposition simply means both and neither, the space between yes and no. Perhaps consciousness lives in that in-between, oscillating between worlds, never fully confined to one. Some neuroscientists have even speculated, cautiously, that quantum processes might play a role in the mind's creativity, that within the microstructures of neurons, tiny fluctuations could influence perception in ways we don't yet understand. But even without invoking subatomic mysteries, the metaphor holds power. The human imagination behaves like a quantum field. It can hold contradictory truths at once: fear and love, loss and joy, the past and the future, all existing until awareness chooses where to rest. For dreamers, this flexibility is more than theory. Everyone has felt it. The ability to live many lives across nights, to love people who never existed, to mourn losses that never happened. These experiences carry emotional reality even when logic denies them. They show that consciousness is not bound by a single storyline. The mind, like the universe, seems to prefer abundance. When you recall a dream that felt unusually vivid, notice how it resists classification. You might think, that was only a dream, and yet your heart still races. Your body still feels the weight of what occurred. The emotional traces remain because, in a sense, they are real. Encoded as neural patterns, yes, but also as lived moments within your personal multiverse. Every dream is a microcosm, a self-contained reality that you briefly inhabit. To the dreamer inside it, there is no as if, there is only is. This raises a quiet, comforting possibility. Maybe we don't just imagine our alternate lives. Maybe we visit them, not in a literal spaceship or through any measurable portal, but through consciousness itself, which might be less like a spotlight shining on one stage and more like a traveller moving through infinite rooms of light. The dream could be a temporary passport, granting us entry to other versions of our own story. Skeptics will rightly note that such ideas, while poetic, remain unproven. The physics of the many worlds interpretation describes equations, not emotions. Yet equations are only another language, symbols describing the same mystery we feel when we ask, why does anything exist at all? When you translate those symbols into imagery, they say something astonishingly human, that the universe is richer than our senses suggest, and that reality may never choose just one form. Dreams, then, become the mind's way of participating in that richness, a nightly rehearsal for infinite possibility. There is a story told by dream researchers about a woman who kept returning to the same city in her sleep. Each time the city had changed slightly, a new bridge, a different skyline, a shop where none existed before. She began keeping maps, marking the differences. After years, the city felt as consistent as any she had visited while awake. Perhaps her brain was simply refining a familiar set of neural patterns, but she liked to think of it another way, that she was living parallel lives in a place whose clock ran beside her own, not within it. Whether metaphor or truth, the feeling matters more than the mechanism. Dreams remind us that existence itself might be broader than what daylight can contain. They whisper that reality, like light through a prism, has countless colours, and that we are capable of perceiving more than one at once. So tonight, as you drift towards sleep, imagine your consciousness as a traveller standing before a mirror made of rippling water. On your side of the reflection lies the world you know, the one filled with familiar names and predictable mornings, but beyond the surface shimmer other versions, waiting like reflections that almost but not quite match your own movements. You reach out, and the glass trembles, and for a moment you are both here and there, awake and dreaming, a single spark in an ocean of possibilities. And maybe that is what it means to dream at all, to wander briefly among the other worlds within the same universe, to remember that you are not confined to one path, one self, or one life, but part of a vast and shimmering field of being, endless and ever unfolding. Imagine holding a hologram in your hands, a small transparent plate that, when light passes through it, reveals the image of an entire three-dimensional scene. The wonder of a hologram is that every fragment of it, even the tiniest corner, contains the whole picture. If you cut the plate in half, you don't get half an image. You get the full image, just dimmer. In this sense, each part carries the pattern of the whole. Now imagine if reality itself worked that way. If every atom, every dream, every thought contained the entire universe folded within it. This is the essence of what physicists call the holographic principle. Translated softly, it suggests that the universe might be like an enormous hologram, a grand image where the depth we experience is an intricate projection of information written across a vast cosmic surface. Space, time, matter, and even consciousness could be expressions of that hidden code, like light patterns shimmering from a film of data. The idea is less about lasers and equations than about structure. Everything that exists may already be inscribed, everywhere. It's a strange concept, but it speaks to something the dreamer already knows intuitively. In dreams, the same principle seems to unfold. Every detail, a pebble on the ground, a stranger's face, a single note of music, feels infused with meaning, as if it holds the essence of the entire dream. Touching one element can make the whole scene shift. You might focus on a door handle and the room changes. You might speak to a figure and the landscape rearranges around your question. The dream behaves like a holographic field, each point alive with the information of the whole. The physicist John Archibald Wheeler once phrased a similar idea in 3 simple words: it from bit. He meant that the physical world, the it, might arise from informational building blocks, the bits. But spoken softly, the phrase sounds almost spiritual. It hints that existence itself could be born from meaning, that the universe is not only made of matter, but of messages? If so, then consciousness might be the reader of those messages, the eye that transforms cosmic script into living story. You can picture it like this. The universe is a library of infinite pages, each written in the language of light. Every page describes a different version of reality, and together they form one great book that writes and reads itself. When you dream, perhaps your awareness turns a few of those pages, sampling other chapters of the same infinite story. When you wake, you return to the familiar paragraph we call daily life. Nothing is lost, only shifted. The reader and the text remain one. This way of seeing reality turns everything intimate. If information is the true fabric of the cosmos, then every perception, every feeling, every breath of wind against your skin is part of a conversation between you and the universe. The data that make up stars and galaxies also flow through your neurons, your heartbeat, your dreams. The difference is only in arrangement, not in essence. A rearrangement of the same letters composing a new word. Neuroscientists sometimes describe the brain in similar terms. Instead of equations and circuits, think of it as an elegant translator. Billions of cells exchange tiny pulses of energy, not dry numbers but rhythmic patterns. Those patterns encode sensations, memories, hopes. The brain doesn't create information. It decodes and re-expresses it, shaping the raw music of the universe into the melody of personal experience. And just as a symphony can sound entirely different depending on the instrument, so the universal data take on new life when played through the instrument of consciousness. In dreams, that translation becomes playful. Without the strict filters of waking attention, the mind can rearrange its informational building blocks freely. A single feeling might appear as a mountain. A single memory might unfold as a lifetime. It's as though the dream rewrites the code in real time, demonstrating the creative power that information holds when touched by awareness. If the universe is indeed a hologram, then dreaming is a small echo of the same process that makes galaxies, the act of light shaping itself into meaning. There's something profoundly comforting in this vision. It tells us that nothing we experience is wasted. Every thought and image, no matter how fleeting, becomes part of the cosmic archive. Even the dreams we forget may persist as ripples of information, subtle vibrations in the larger field of existence. In that sense, to dream is to participate in the universe's ongoing creation, to add your own whisper to the endless pattern of light. For many cultures, this idea was expressed long before science gave it equations. Mystics spoke of the world as a divine reflection, where each soul mirrored the whole. The poet William Blake wrote, "To see a world in a grain of sand." Hindu philosophy calls it Indra's net, an infinite web of jewels, each reflecting every other, so that the entire cosmos appears within each point. The holographic principle is simply a modern echo of that ancient vision, a bridge between poetic insight and physical law. Dreams, in this context, become more than nighttime entertainment. They are the mind's way of glimpsing the structure of reality itself. Every dream is a miniature hologram, a universe made of meaning, projected from the light of awareness. When you look closely, even the smallest fragment contains the pattern of your entire life. A recurring object, a familiar sound, a colour that keeps returning. These are not random. They're intersections, places where the greater code shines through. If you wish to feel this directly, try something gentle. The next time you recall a dream, don't focus on its story. Instead, choose one small detail, a leaf, a window, a scent. Imagine that everything you need to understand about yourself and your life is hidden within that single detail, folded like light inside a prism. Sit quietly with it, as you might hold a seashell to your ear. You may begin to sense patterns, emotions, memories, connections, radiating outward from that single point. The holographic dream reveals itself through attention. Perhaps that is why both scientists and mystics find themselves using the same word, reflection. In the end, the universe might be less a machine and more a mirror, one that shows you who you are by letting you dream of what you're made of. And maybe this is the ultimate secret of the holographic cosmos. Every dream, every life, every star is a reflection of one boundless whole, looking back at itself through an infinite array of eyes. So tonight, as you lie down and let your thoughts blur into the gentle hum of sleep, remember this: you are part of the pattern. When your mind begins to weave its private dream, the universe is not elsewhere watching. It is within you, folding and unfolding its light in miniature, rehearsing creation once more. You're not separate from the code, you're one of its living lines, a verse written in the language of stars, softly dreaming itself awake. Close your eyes for a moment and picture your consciousness as sunlight. It's vast, radiant, and everywhere at once. Now imagine your brain as a narrow window with coloured glass. The light passes through it, filtered into a smaller, more organised beam. That beam becomes your individual awareness, the you who wakes up in the morning, who has a name, who thinks in words. But the light itself, before the filter, belongs to something larger. This was the image that fascinated the writer and philosopher Aldous Huxley. He once suggested that the brain doesn't produce consciousness, it limits it. Like a valve controlling the flow of water, the mind reduces an overwhelming flood of perception into a manageable stream, allowing us to function in daily life. Most of what we call reality, he said, is what's left after the filter has done its work. But sometimes, through dreams, meditation, deep love, or even near-death experiences, the valve opens a little wider and we glimpse the greater field behind it. Translated softly, this theory means that consciousness might not be something trapped inside the skull. It might be something we tune into, like radio waves filling the air. The brain would be the receiver, shaping the signal into recognizable form. When we dream, perhaps that tuning shifts slightly, letting in frequencies we don't notice while awake. The result is a world of shifting imagery, half personal, half universal, the static of infinity rearranged into meaning. Neuroscience supports part of this metaphor. When we fall asleep, the brain's default mode network, the system responsible for maintaining our sense of self, begins to quiet. The borders of ego loosen. In its place, other regions responsible for emotion and imagination grow louder, communicating in flashes of imagery and metaphor. The result is not chaos, but a different kind of order, where feelings become landscapes and thoughts turn into living symbols. In this sense, the brain truly does act like a filter, selecting which parts of the larger field become visible. Some scientists, like the physicist Roger Penrose and the anesthesiologist Stuart Hameroff, have speculated that this field might operate on quantum levels, within the tiny microtubules of neurons, where subtle vibrations could link the brain to the fabric of the universe. They call their proposal orchestrated objective reduction, though we can imagine it more gently as the whisper of quantum music within the cells. It's an attempt to describe how the physical and the mental might dance together, matter vibrating with meaning, the mind emerging not from mechanics, but from harmony. Whether or not that particular model proves true, it captures a feeling that dreamers know well, the sense that consciousness can expand beyond its usual boundaries. In lucid dreams or deep meditation, awareness seems to stretch outward until it no longer belongs to one body. People often describe becoming the entire landscape, the air itself, or the observer watching from everywhere at once. It's a sensation of dissolving, but not of disappearing, more like remembering the rest of yourself. Mystics across cultures have described similar experiences. The Sufis call it the ocean of unity. In Hindu philosophy, it's Brahman, the field of being that underlies all forms. In Christian mysticism, it's the presence of divine light that fills all things. Science, in its own way, uses different language to point toward the same mystery, that at the deepest level, everything is connected through fields of energy and information. Whether we call it consciousness, God, or the quantum substrate, the intuition remains the same. Separateness is an illusion of perspective. Dreams may be the most natural doorway into this awareness. Each night, as the valve of attention loosens, we enter a realm where inner and outer blend. A thought becomes a room, a memory becomes a person. The boundary between the observer and the observed dissolves, and we witness the hidden truth that they were never two things at all. When you wake from such a dream, there's often a strange calm, as if something inside you has remembered how vast it really is. The psychologist William James once called this state cosmic consciousness, a heightened awareness in which the universe seems to recognize itself through you. He didn't mean it as mysticism, but as psychology, the mind's occasional ability to sense the full network of life it usually filters out. For him, these moments weren't hallucinations, they were reality glimpsed more clearly. In dreams, such moments can arrive quietly, standing in a field that feels infinite, or meeting a presence made only of light, or hearing music so pure that you realize it's your own heartbeat echoed by the stars. From a biological view, these experiences are still made of chemistry, small surges of serotonin, gentle shifts in the brain's oscillations, the slow rhythm of the sleeping heart. But those mechanisms don't erase the meaning. You could say the body is the instrument, and the field is the song. The frequencies of the heart, the pulses of the neurons, are the notes that consciousness plays to remember itself. If all this sounds abstract, think of the moments in waking life that feel dreamlike, the instant when a sunset suddenly stops you, or when you sense someone thinking of you just before they call. These are brief openings in the filter, tiny cracks where the light shines through. They remind us that the extraordinary is always nearby, hidden beneath ordinary perception. The same network that glows in the brain glows in the stars. The same current that moves through neurons moves through trees, oceans, and the quiet spaces between. Some traditions teach simple ways to widen that window gently. In meditation, you might focus not on your thoughts, but on the silence between them, the stillness from which each thought arises. In lucid dreaming, you might pause and look around, not to control the world, but to feel how alive it already is. The more you notice, the more the field responds, as if awareness itself is the thread connecting everything you see. And maybe that's what the dream state teaches us most tenderly, that consciousness is not a possession, but a participation. We don't have awareness, we are awareness. The body is a temporary lens, the mind a prism refracting the larger light. When the dream fades and the morning arrives, we haven't left that field. We've simply narrowed our focus back to a single beam. The greater light is still shining everywhere, waiting for us to look again. So when you drift into sleep tonight, imagine your thoughts dissolving like mist. The valve of your mind opens wider, and the soft radiance of the field begins to flow through. It hums not as noise, but as music, the sound of a universe remembering itself through you. Every colour of that song passes through your consciousness, and together they form something only you can express, a human life, small yet luminous, carrying the light of the infinite through the dream of the world. There's a quiet kind of magic in the way dreams help us mend. Long before science gave the process a name, people sensed that sleep was medicine, not only for the body but for the heart. Even when the day has left you frayed, even when grief or worry fill your thoughts, something happens once you drift away. Your breathing slows, your mind begins its nightly wandering, and within that vast inner theatre, healing begins its work. From a biological point of view, it's simple yet profound. During certain phases of sleep, especially deep REM, the brain revisits emotional memories, softening their edges. The regions that handle fear and stress quiet down, while areas linked to empathy and creativity light up. If you could watch it happen, it would look like a careful weaving, the mind rethreading tangled strands of experience into a pattern that feels whole again. To describe it softly, each night, the heart tells its stories to itself, and in the retelling, they hurt a little less. But healing in dreams goes beyond chemistry. It unfolds through symbol and story. A person who has lost someone might dream of a conversation that never happened, a chance to say goodbye, or to listen one more time. Someone carrying guilt might find themselves performing an act of forgiveness that feels as real as life. The dream becomes a laboratory for the soul, a place where the psyche can experiment with resolution, compassion, and renewal. It's as though, in that otherworldly lab, every emotion is invited to breathe, to unfold, and to be understood. You might think of it as meeting different versions of yourself, the one who still grieves, the one who has begun to heal, the one who has already forgiven. In the daylight, these selves can't all exist at once. The mind is linear, and time moves in one direction. But in dreams, time is circular, and identity is fluid. You can meet your past as if it were present, and you can step into futures that feel healed and whole. When you wake, those futures leave a trace, like the scent of rain that lingers after a storm. In psychological research, this phenomenon is known as memory reconsolidation, the brain's way of rewriting emotional experiences into gentler forms. But if we translate it softly, it becomes something more poetic, the mind rehearsing hope. Every time you dream of surviving something, of finding your way out of danger, or simply of holding warmth again, you're teaching your body what peace feels like. That knowledge doesn't vanish at dawn. It lingers in the nervous system, shaping your resilience for the waking day. Sometimes, the healing comes through mystery. People often dream of meeting figures who seem to carry wisdom, a stranger who says exactly what you needed to hear, or an animal that guides you to safety. Whether these figures are parts of the subconscious or glimpses of something larger hardly matters. What matters is the way they leave you changed. They remind you that within the architecture of the mind there exists a quiet intelligence, a guiding current that knows where the broken pieces belong. Across cultures, dream healing has always been part of the human story. In ancient Greece, the sick would sleep in temples dedicated to Asclepius, the god of medicine, hoping to receive guidance from dreams. Indigenous shamans entered trance to retrieve lost parts of the soul, returning with symbols of renewal. Tibetan dream yoga treats the dream state as a realm of purification, where compassion and awareness can dissolve even deep-rooted pain. Modern psychology, though it uses different words, continues the same tradition. We heal by listening to what the dreaming mind has to say. In this sense, the dream world could be thought of as the multiverse's own gentle clinic. There, all the versions of you, the strong, the weak, the frightened, the wise, can meet and exchange understanding. Perhaps in some parallel world, another you is already free from the burden you carry. When you sleep, you might touch that version, borrowing a little of their light. Healing then becomes not a process of escape, but of reunion, a remembering of wholeness that never truly left. From a physical perspective, the connection might come down to energy and pattern. Brainwaves during restorative sleep move in rhythmic pulses, like tides washing the shores of the nervous system. Hormones recalibrate, heart rate slows, immune cells renew their strength. Yet beneath these measurable effects, something subtler unfolds, a conversation between consciousness and its many layers. In that conversation, forgiveness becomes frequency, gratitude becomes rhythm, and love becomes resonance. Every dream carries potential medicine, even the unsettling ones. Nightmares, for instance, are not enemies but messengers. They surface when something in the mind needs attention, a fear unspoken, a grief unprocessed, a truth unseen. Facing a nightmare consciously, even in reflection the next morning, is like shining light into a shadowed room. The darkness fades not because it is destroyed, but because it is understood, and understanding, gentle and patient, is one of the oldest forms of healing there is. If you wish to invite healing dreams, the process can be simple. Before sleep, write down what you wish to release or understand. Phrase it softly, as an invitation rather than a demand. Something like, "Show me what I'm ready to let go," or "Help me see this pain in a new way." Then close your eyes and imagine placing that thought into the current of the wider universe, a small message drifting on a wide ocean. When you wake, even if no clear answer appears, notice how your emotions have shifted. Healing doesn't always arrive as revelation. Sometimes it comes as peace, where tension once lived. In the greater picture, dreaming is not an escape from reality, but its continuation through a different medium. Just as a physicist might say, energy can neither be created nor destroyed, so perhaps emotional truth can neither vanish nor stay buried. It transforms, changes state, moves from visible to invisible and back again. Dreams are part of that transformation, the mind's alchemy, turning experience into wisdom, pain into strength, confusion into story. And maybe this is why we sleep at all. To return each night to the workshop of consciousness, to repair what daylight frays, to let the self remember that it is more than its struggles, more than its fears, that it belongs to something vast and luminous, an endless network of awareness quietly guiding everything back toward balance. So as you close your eyes tonight, imagine yourself entering that luminous lab. The air hums with quiet possibility. All around you, threads of light connect one world to another, every dreamer, every memory, every heartbeat woven into the same gentle fabric. Somewhere within it, the healed version of you is waiting, smiling with patience. You step forward and for a moment the boundaries blur. You realize you were never separate from that light. You were simply learning how to see it again. And if your eyes grow heavy as you listen to these words, that's perfectly fine. It means the experiment has already begun. A slow, kind reunion between all the parts of you that have always belonged together. Sleep well and let the universe finish what it started.